Welcome to the Women's Football Show here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Kerry Pollock. Alison McConnell, Cheryl Smith and Cara Henderson are here with me. Let's have a look at the results from the weekend to see how things are shaping up. Friday night it was Glasgow City 2, Celtic 2, Spartans 6, Dundee United moving on to Sunday, Hearts 6, Queen's Park 0, Montrose 0, Hibernian 2, Motherwell 4, Aberdeen 2, Partick 0 and Rangers 6. Alison, let's start with Friday night's game. That head-to-head, could you separate the two sides at all?
I think a draw was probably a fair reflection of the game. I think there were points within the game where each team had spells of being dominant. Lee Gibson had two really good saves just after Celtic had levelled things. I thought Glasgow City had a very good chance just at the start of the second half, maybe to extend their lead at 3-1. I think overall you would have to say a point was probably a fair reflection. I think both managers seemed fairly content with a point, but what it does now, the ramifications of that and then the results on Sunday mean that you have four teams now all sitting level in points, and Rangers' vastly superior goal difference comes into play as they lead the pack now. But I think it all points to a really intriguing run in now.
Cheryl, you were also there on Friday night. Did you see either side deserve the win more, or was a draw fair?
I agree with Alison. I think a draw was a fair result. It was a really quick start from Celtic, but again, conceding goals. You know, they let Caitlin Hayes go in January and didn't replace her. I think that's going to be a problem for them in this run-in, just being able to keep a clean sheet, especially in the bigger games against Rangers, Glasgow City and even Hibs and Hearts. But no, I think a draw was fair in the end.
Alison, it's not a concerning amount of goals that Celtic have conceded, but is it maybe, as Cheryl's alluded to there, the manner in which they're conceding goals in games?
I'm not sure so much if it's the manner. I think there's definitely been a fragility about Celtic defensively at points, particularly notable when they're playing, as Cheryl says, the bigger teams, when they're coming up against Rangers and Glasgow City. Also games where the pressure is on. I think managers will tell you that the league's not decided on those head-to-heads, but I think it has a huge bearing on who goes on and claims the title. Now, I'll qualify that by saying last year the points that the Rangers dropped to Hearts actually probably cost them the title. However, I do think the games against one another are really important when it comes to going on and deciding the title. But yeah, I think a lot of people were very surprised when Celtic didn't replace Caitlin Hayes. I think she is essentially, or was essentially rather, the poster girl for that Celtic team. She'd become a very dominant figure on and off the pitch. For Celtic, I don't think there was any real secret from last summer that she was going to go, and in actual fact, Elena Sadiku had said to us once that the move to Brighton was confirmed that she had known some point early in December that Caitlin Hayes would be going, so there was ample time for the club to source a replacement. Sadiku said she had one lined up. She'd gone so far as to have talks, personal terms, and then the move broke down at the last minute. So we can only assume that breaks down because of finances, which I think will probably feel very frustrating for her. I think it was notable that she said a few weeks back that her budget was more in keeping with that of Hearts and Hibs than it was with Glasgow City and Rangers, and that will be interesting to see now as the campaign really takes hold, because I do wonder about the strength and depth that Celtic have, because they've already had a very challenging opening half of the season, just fighting on four fronts. I think when you're not used to that gruelling nature of Champions League games and you're playing Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, I think it does take a physical and mental toll. So that's gone. They have only the focus of the league now, but again, the games come quite thick and fast once. So we'll go into the international break now. There's one game before the split, and then after the split, it's very, very intense again.
I think there's a deeper problem there though, because Suzanne Lappin sat in this show last year after Celtic had won the title, and she said they could have won it 10 years before if the investment had been there, and she was right. And I think now they're at a point where they twist or stick, because clearly Hibs and Hearts are invested, and what's happening with them on the pitch is not by chance. Rangers and Glasgow City are going to do the same, so Celtic need to decide, I think. Do they want to be a team that's just going to win the league once every 2-3 years, or are they going to be a team that's going to challenge every year, get the Champions League and push on from there? I don't really know what it is that they're doing, but I think they need to kind of come to some decision. She clearly was not backed in January.
Mm-hmm. Is that a surprise to you, Cara? Like, you see that Hibs and Hearts have been able to close that gap between themselves, Celtic, Rangers, Glasgow City, when the financial difference is quite big?
Yes and no. I think you can't diminish how much extra from a player it gives you training 3-4 times a day, during the week, sorry, and having the extra recovery, the extra attention to detail. I think that's so important, and I think that definitely you notice that on the pitch in terms of the fact that, Partick, Thistle, I don't know, other part-time teams, we train 3 times a week, and in that 3 you've got an hour and a half and you've got to squeeze so much in. They can have, much more time than that during the day, working on phases of play, working on their structure, and I think that's definitely happening. You can see the effect that's having on Hearts and Hibs because they are stronger. When you're playing against them, you can just see in their movements how fit they are, that there is a difference definitely from last year. But I don't know. I think it's hard because I do think the investment's there for Glasgow City, Rangers, Celtic, but I don't know if it's necessary. We'll see at the end of the season because you've got to maintain that for a full season. I think that's the real judgment of Hibs and Hearts have done so well to a point. If they can continue to maintain that, and that when it gets to the split and they're playing against Glasgow City Rangers themselves 2 more times, that'll be the interesting point for me, because if they can maintain that, then you've got a right good title race on your hands.
Absolutely, as Alison mentioned, 4 teams, of course, on the same points as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's so exciting. I think from a neutral's point of view, obviously I'm not a neutral, but from a neutral's point of view, I think it's great that it's so competitive. You want it to continue to be that, and the more it goes down to the wire, the more exciting it gets. And I think also that competitive environment should provide for more quality as well. You need the quality if you're going to win the games. You need to have that extra little something. And I think that going into the split, it'll be so interesting to see how it matches, because I don't really think you can take your eye off the ball with any of the teams as well.
Absolutely not. Well, it was a piece of quality that opened the scoring on Friday night for Celtic, but Glasgow City boss Leanne Ross was left bemused with the explanation from match officials on that one.
We were certainly aggrieved with the kick-off. We could see that she was a good 20-30 yards into our half, but the explanation that I got from the 4th official at half-time was that the communication didn't work between himself and the officials that were on the pitch. But how 3 of them can't see that she's 30 yards into her half, I don't know. But at the end of the day, we need to deal better with that. It comes from a throw-in into our box, and we need to do much better.
I think we've got a picture of that as well with Lucy Ashford-Clifford just out of her position. Alison, did you notice that at the time?
Yeah, I did notice it. In actual fact, so did the referee, because the referee actually called her back and she very half-heartedly came back a couple of yards and then play went on. So it was noticed by the officials and allowed to go. And I could completely understand why Glasgow City felt aggrieved, and you could argue that the goal doesn't come directly from that passage of play, but the ball didn't come back out of Glasgow City's half before Celtic had scored. And I think it looks poor. I don't think it's a good reflection on the league as a whole. I think it looks very amateurish. I think you need officials to be a bit more stringent with basics, essentially. I don't really think it's good enough either. An explanation that says there's a communication breakdown, well, what does that actually mean? I don't think that's an acceptable explanation on any kind of level, especially now when you're thinking that these are games that very much can go on and decide a championship. And Leanne Ross went on to say that she'd spoken to Willie Collum before Friday night. She'd spoken to Willie Collum, obviously the head of the referees with the SFA, on the back of the Scottish Cup win over Celtic when they had a goal chopped off, and the referee had originally indicated that the goal had been allowed to stand, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, after consultation, the goal was chopped off. So she'd spoken to Willie Collum about that. I think there is a conversation that probably needs to be had about the standard of officiating in the Women's League. I think at points there are decisions that are baffling, and that's the perfect example. I think you can understand why Glasgow City were annoyed about it. The other thing I would say is, if an incident like that happens in such a high-profile game, in the men's game, we'd be talking about this for days upon days upon days. I think they're right to flag it, and I think they're right to say, that Celtic's goal, that first goal, came from a move that should never have been allowed to stand. It was illegal.
And the professionalism, Cheryl, should be at the highest standard at all times. But as Alison mentioned, in games like this, where they are title deciders potentially, and they really do mean a lot to either side, that could decide the title at the end of the season.
I agree with everything Alison says there, but it's just, that is actually laughable, because all it does is open up the game to criticism, especially from people who may not watch it all the time. It's just, you just need to be getting these things right. There's a lot of people who work really hard in the women's game in Scotland to bring in, lots of, generate interest and investment ultimately. When you've got things like that going on, it's just, it just diminishes it. It's just really, really poor. I don't understand the explanation either. I don't really know what that means. It's very obvious what happened, so start the game when the player's in the correct position. I don't understand that, and I can understand why Leon Ross was annoyed about it.
Well, Elena Sudoku was certainly happier at the end of the game, having taken a point for that game, and still believes her side can contend for the title at the end of the season.
100% confident. If I was not, then I shouldn't stand here. I believe so much in the staff. I believe so much in the players, and we have the quality. We just need to push for the details and keep going and keep being even better, because I said it before, Celtic has not reached their full potential yet.
Can they still contend for the title, Alison, in your eyes?
Of course they can. I mean, you've got 4 teams sitting on 51 points just now. Of course they can. I still think it's probably anyone's title. You'd have to say Rangers' goal difference is probably, at the minute, worth an extra point. I don't see anyone making up that ground now, particularly the fact that they're going into post-split fixtures where games will be a lot tighter. I think it's fairly clear this season that Rangers were fuelled by the hurt of last season, by losing a league, by a solitary goal. They lost out in goal difference, the final kick of the ball last season. I think there's been a very concerted effort, certainly notably for me, from Rangers and from Glasgow City, to be much more ruthless in front of goal, to be clinical in games. So if you're sitting at 2-0 or 3-0, that you hammer it, that you're not taking your foot off it, that you keep going. And that's why I think you've seen results this season like 10-0 against Aberdeen, 8-0 against Montrose, 8-0 against Dundee United. I think all those 3 teams that you would imagine will be fighting out for the title, and that's no disrespect to Hibs, because I think Hibs will push it all the way, and I think they'll have a say in the destination of the title. I just don't know that they've got the depth to go to the final weeks of the campaign, but what you can really see that they have all accepted that goal difference might play a part in the destination of the title. And Cara will tell you more than any of us sitting here. I can only speak from an observer's point of view, that I think there are strengths and weaknesses to each of the top 3. But when they have played one another, I have found them fairly evenly matched. Now, Glasgow City's result against Rangers when they beat them 3-0 just prior to the winter break was a surprise. I think it's probably the poorest I had seen Rangers play. But when you take and assess each of the 3 teams, I think there's very, very little between the top 3, and that's been the case across recent seasons. Really, maybe last season Glasgow City would have been disappointed to fall away a bit, but for me there's not been much between them, and goal difference is certainly a factor. But I think if you were in any of their shoes now, your whole focus has to be on points rather than goal difference. It has to be about, you can't assume that you're going to bank the points. You have to go out, you have to keep your focus and your discipline, get the win, and then see what happens. But I don't think you'll see the same kind of big scorelines now post-split in a couple of weeks, because you would anticipate it being tighter. The only thing you might fear for Motherwell, because they may find themselves cannon fodder when it comes to these games, and they are seen as maybe the weaker team in that top 6, which you will have had the experience of last season. Partick, Thistle were in that
It's a hard place to be honest. I think last season, the first season, there wasn't an expectation on us, particularly first time we'd got in the top 6. Last season, our second stint in the top 6, I think we kind of wanted to be more competitive than we actually ended up being. And as you said, with that extra added goal difference part of it, that I think I've spoken about before in the show, they score a goal and they're not celebrating, they're getting the ball at the net and they're putting it straight back down and they're going again, and that it is relentless. It's really tough, but you know what, see, as a player playing against full-time teams, it is where you want to be. That's why we're disappointed obviously this year that we're not in it, because that type of mentality, that type of quality that you need, because you can say, okay, Motherwell are the part-time team, we want to go and put as many goals past them. You got that. That is really it is tough, because Motherwell have got a lot of good players. We had a lot of good players, and we're playing for pride as well. You don't want to be the team that teams look at and go, right, we've got Partick Thistle this week, we've got Motherwell this week, easy 3 points, we'll try and put his goal. You don't want to be that. So I also think it would be to the top 5 teams' detriment if they looked at Motherwell like that this season, because we obviously took points off of Rangers last season. I think we got a draw. I think it was 0-0. and it took a lot of hard work, but those points could have been crucial for Rangers last season as well. So certainly not the easiest position to be in, though, that's for sure.
Just to go back to your point there, Alison, you said points are more valuable, obviously, than goals. Will there not be a bit of both? Because the top three, especially, they're assuming that each other are going to win their games.
Of course, but I just don't think you can take your eye off the ball, because if you are to drop points or have a draw somewhere unexpectedly, it could be crippling. It could have a huge say. So, yeah, I think they'll want to be winning games first and foremost. I think they'll want to consign the goal difference almost to the back burner, to say you cannot afford to be caught up in this. Your focus has got to be winning games and then taking it from there. I also think it's just a bit too early to be thinking about goal difference. It will become a factor. I think Rangers absolutely have a huge advantage at the minute, given how superior it is. I think it's 18 goals they're better off than Glasgow City, and I think 26 better off than Celtic. That's a huge amount to try and make up, and I think if you get caught up on that, you can just take your eye off the ball a bit.
Obviously, the split is coming up, Cheryl, and they'll play each other twice. Is this where the gaps will start to form in your eyes?
Yeah, I think the team that wins the title is going to be the one that deals with the pressure the most. It's going to be really intense pressure, like Alison's talking about. You're going into every game knowing that you basically can't drop points, because it's about the points and not the goal difference, which is why I don't think Celtic will win it, because I don't think that they have the strength and depth or even the experience throughout the whole team that Rangers have and that Glasgow City have. So yeah, it'll be nip and tuck, but yeah, I think the team that can deal with that pressure and has the experience of dealing with it will be the one that comes out on top.
So it's between Rangers and Glasgow City for you to win the title, Cara?
I don't know.
Can you pick between the three as a player coming up against all three?
I think they actually all offer different types of threat, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I honestly, the reason I would say that I don't know, I would struggle to put it down to three, is because I genuinely think Hearts and Hibs are going to have a say in matters. I don't think that going through to Edinburgh in the split is going to be an easy place for any of them to go to. And also, it's hard to discount Hibs when they're on 51 points. They've done well, they've done the business. They beat Rangers 3-0. That was a very emphatic win. So I don't know. I think it probably will come down to the head-to-heads between the top three, potentially. But within that, I think it's going to be really interesting. I could not tell you who I think is going to win.
We're all playing it very safe, Alison. Can you pick a winner yourself?
I really don't know. I think Rangers have the edge at the minute just because of the goal difference. I think psychologically it gives you something extra. I think it's worth probably an extra point at this stage, but I don't know. I think there's question marks over Rangers too when it comes to handling pressure and big moments, as you've seen. They're absolutely not invincible. I think Glasgow City played very well against them at the start of the season when the teams played at Ibrox, and then of course Glasgow City beat them 3-0, Hibs beat them 3-0 through at Meadowbank. I think there are weaknesses in all three teams and obvious strengths among them. I think you'd be hard pressed at the minute to say which of them will prevail, but what you can say is the league is set for a really intriguing run in, and that's a good thing. I think you want as much excitement, as much focus and as much attention on it as possible. You want to be inviting in sponsorship that then elevates the standard within the league. I think the big problem that the league has is that you have essentially two leagues within a league, that you have this professional top five and then you have everyone else, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots is absolute. It's phenomenally big. It's a really huge chasm to try and bridge. I'm not sure the optics of that look good across the season when you do have results like a 10-0 and 8-0 and 6-0, and I think you want it to be more competitive, and that's only going to happen with money. It's only going to happen if you can have a professional contract that runs throughout the league. If you have a professional league, and that is light years away at the minute. So anything, I think having a really tight title race is good because it invites focus. We've seen Sky TV cameras following the destination of the trophy on the last day. We've had Fiona McIntyre filmed live. Where is it going? Is it changing direction? You saw a pulsating final day at Ibrox a couple of seasons back when Glasgow City won it on a day when 3 teams could have won it. Last season, Celtic winning it, Amy Gallagher's goal, almost the last kick of the ball at Celtic Park. Rangers on course to win it, and then it changed within a minute. That's what you want. You want that focus, you want that attention, and then you want to monetise that.
Absolutely, Cara. Just before we end then, unfortunately, Thistle have fallen out of the top 6. What are the targets for the team now going forward?
Yeah, it's disappointing, obviously. I think we've only got ourselves to blame, though. Full credit goes to Motherwell. I think, obviously, we've had I think it's been a tough season. I think the highs of last year were always going to be pretty hard to replicate. I think we're disappointed in where we've let ourselves down this year. So for the last 11 games or so, I think it's just about getting back into a bit of a rhythm, getting a wee bit of momentum back. We've had a very up and down season. We've had some good results, and then we've had some bad results, and good performances, bad performances. So listen, not playing the top 5 teams allows for probably us being more competitive in these last 11 games, and for us, we just want to try and get the maximum out of every single game that we can. That will not be easy, but I think that we've got a good opportunity now to show that we are a good team and to get in a wee bit of a rhythm, as I said. And listen, there's a jeopardy of the relegation zones as well. It's not an easy place to be because you've got 3 teams going down. You've got teams that are definitely going to make sure that they're not in that position. But for us, it's just about taking care of business from ourselves and getting into a place where we're speaking at the end of the season and we've had a much more positive run of games, probably.
Absolutely. Well, fingers crossed we can do that then. On behalf of myself, Alison, Cheryl and Cara, thanks for listening and thanks for watching.